252 grottos with 51,000 elegant Buddhist statues stand on a cliff that stretches for a kilometre. The largest sculpture is 17 metres high, with the smallest just a few centimetres in size. The statues, carved in various positions, are breathtaking to behold. This is the first of China's large-scale grottos from which the art form shifted exclusively to stonework. A variety of statue-making techniques merged into a form known as the Yungang mode. This was an important turning point in the history of Chinese Buddhist art. Everyone who beholds the Yungang grottos is shaken by its magnificence. Who was it that turned this cliff into such a glorious art museum? The ancient and vast Great Wall winding through northern China stands as a lonely guard over the ever-changing frontier town of Datung. Once known as Pingqiang, in past dynasties it was critical to the national defences. In the year 398, an ethnic minority known as the Xianbei crossed the Great Wall, and they established the Northern Wei dynasty here. From then on, the dream of the fierce nomads to conquer the world began in Pingqiang. Just as Pingqiang itself was forgotten, the Xianbei people disappeared from history as well, leaving only this silent monument that has stood for 1,000 years. The Yungang grottos began with the 5 grottos of Tanyao. These 5 huge Buddhist statues, 13.8 to 15.5 meters high, represent the 5 early emperors of the Northern Wei. These caves are like dusty historical museums. From the desolate prairie to the central plains, the Northern Wei rulers began thinking about how to win over the Han people. The Han, who had been conquered by force, needed a reason to tolerate this foreign ethnic group. This being the case, the founding emperor of the Northern Wei, Emperor Daowu, immediately accepted Buddhism as the national religion, largely as a means to ease ethnic tensions. The most symbolic Buddhist statue in the Yungang grottos was created for Emperor Daowu. He has slender eyes, a high nose, wide and straight shoulders, and wears different expressions when observed from different angles. Emperor Daowu's attitude toward this religion coincided with the desire of Buddhism to take root in China with imperial support. According to historical records, the northern Buddhist leading monk changed the practice of Buddhism and publicly declared that the emperor was the reincarnation of Tathagata, and he took the lead in prostrating himself towards the emperor. This seated statue vividly shows the royal demeanor of Sakyamuni. Emperor Dawu was very satisfied with being compared with Buddha. The majestic emperor took on the role by putting on a kasaya and sitting in Pingchang quietly guarding his subjects. When the regime of the Northern Wei was passed down to Emperor Mingyuan, Pingchang was not only the capital of the dynasty, but also a large-scale Buddhist center. More and more people converted to Buddhism as a way of evading taxes. Emperor Mingyuan, who was enthusiastic about Buddhism, began to show some deep concerns about its effect, however. Without foraging grounds and soldiers, how could the Xianbei continue to sweep across the Central Plains? Later, Emperor Taiwu took the throne. In March of the year 446 AD, Emperor Taiwu ordered that all monks should be put to death and that all Buddhist statues be destroyed. Anyone who spoke of Buddhism would have his entire family executed. Within just a few months, thousands of temples in Pingchang had been torched, and tens of thousands of monks had either resumed secular life or fled north of the Great Wall. Buddhism thus suffered its first major setback since its introduction into China. The standing statue of Sakyamuni in his 1000 Buddha Kasaya symbolizes Emperor Taiwu, who caused this persecution. There are few Buddhist statues thus dressed, and it's said to represent sincere repentance. The gesture of the left hand on the chest and the drooping right hand depicts a penitent attitude. There's also a sense of deep condolence for the victims. Inside the cave, a bodhisattva is carved on each side of Lord Buddha, while statues of 5 disciples are carved above the bodhisattvas. Their eyes of compassion seem to remind the living to forget about the miserable past. The figure of Emperor Taiwu standing high on the cliff indicates the imperial supremacy of the Northern Wei. But Buddhists say that he stands there reflecting in his heart upon the powers of the Buddha. It is said that after the persecution of Buddhists, Emperor Taiwu suddenly became seriously ill and had the ministers who were in favor of the persecution executed. However, people had lost confidence in the regime after this catastrophe, and the Northern Wei, with its sure footing to the south of the Great Wall, was once again faced with dangerous divisions. In the winter of the year 452 AD, a monk named Tan Yao walked with a heavy heart to the outskirts of Pingcheng. Thinking of the thousands of temples destroyed in the disaster, Tan Yao was wondering how to keep forever the light of the Buddha alive amongst the people. Pingcheng was close at hand. Suddenly, a horse nipped at Tan Yao's kasaya. The man on horseback was none other than the emperor. The emperor was Emperor Taiwu's grandson. In order to reassure the public, this juvenile monarch who had only just ascended to the throne revived Buddhism with great fanfare. The fleeing monks returned. This encounter between the monk and the emperor would dramatically change history. At the end of the year 460 AD, with the cold wind blowing from the northwest, the carving of statues was in full swing at the foot of Wuzhou Mountain. With the support of the Fourth Northern Wei Emperor, the new Buddhist leader Tan Yao led thousands of prisoners, captives and craftsmen to create an immortal treasure of Buddhist art using the most primitive tools. "60 years after becoming the state religion of the Northern Wei, Buddhism could finally spread permanently. But at the same time, the young monarch demanded to see the images of the Northern Wei emperors reflected in the Buddhist statues. It was very difficult to build statues on such a huge mountain. Moreover, when Buddhism was introduced to China, it brought with it strict rules on the carving of statues. How did Tan Yao coordinate the monarchy with Buddhism? The dignified temperament of an emperor is far more important than his handsome face. Tan Yao and his artisans stuck with the style of Buddhist statues found in India, making only subtle changes in expression and proportion. However, it was precisely these subtle changes in the face and mouth that stamped the Chinese imperial style on Indian Buddhist statues. Such changes were significant. They skillfully met the implicit aesthetic tastes of the Chinese people who pursued likeness and spirit, and they helped Buddhist statue carving take a crucial step towards secularization. When observing directly in front of the statue, the ratio of the head and shoulder is almost 1:3. And neither Chinese nor Indians have such large proportions. Yet from a lower height, as a subject of the Northern Wei would have viewed the statue, the proportions seem perfect. In point of fact, it is this exaggeration in dimensions that created the royal demeanor of the Yuangang Buddhas. It not only received recognition from the Xianbei royal family, but also became the rule of the National Grotto Sanctuary. The supreme right over the nation is always the focus of courtly battles. No one remembers the losers. This tall bodhisattva statue with crossed legs symbolizes Emperor Wenchang's father, the prince who died during strife while at court. In Buddhism, bodhisattvas usually sit cross-legged, representing the image of wise men on their way to achieving Buddhahood. The image expresses respect for Buddhism and also the good wishes of a son for his father, who, although he never ascended the throne in his lifetime, might possibly do so in the next. The statue is dressed in ancient Indian aristocratic garments, with his left hand on an ancient Greek column. This reveals the characteristic mix of Buddhist art in the context of signification. In the 5 grottos of Tanyao, the standing statue of Sakyamuni at 13.5 meters high is the most handsome. It represents Emperor Wenchang, the juvenile monarch who ordered the grotto excavation. His statue is both energetic and refreshing, featuring both a nomadic ruggedness and a hand delicacy. In the body of the Buddha statue, some places are embedded with red stone cores, although some of the cores have fallen off, leaving behind only black holes. What is the reason for this? According to historical records, these cores matched exactly the moles on the emperor's body. Besides this feature, there is another interesting phenomenon. On the solemn face of the Buddha, there is a thin moustache over his pursed lips, which is not only a style inherited from ancient India, but a specific expression of the emperor on the face of the statue. The Buddha is gazing off into the distance. Perhaps he is overlooking the central plains that the Xianbei people so dreamed of. In just 34 years, from 460 to 494 AD, under the auspices of the Northern Wei dynasty, Tanyao led artisans in turning over half of Mount Wuzhou into Buddhist artworks, creating a magnificent Buddhist world. The Buddhist statues of this period were mostly simple and plain, and they integrated the style of the Xianbei people based on an ancient Indian prototype. In order to reflect the oppression and majesty of imperial power, Tanyao tried to build small caves with large statues as much as was possible. But it was in the process of catering to the needs of imperial power that Tanyao and the artisans inadvertently broke the boundaries between man and God. In so doing, they created a large space for the future development of Chinese Buddhist art. The royalty of Northern Wei lives on with the mountain and the Buddhist statues. However, could the dynasty really be as eternal as the mountain itself? To build these magnificent statues, artisans worked day and night. In the year 490, under the auspices of Emperor Shaowen, who had only just taken over as ruler, the Yungan grottos faced their final glory before being abandoned. This ambitious monarch was no longer satisfied with the territory north of the Yellow River. Could the Buddha bless him and help him to realize his dream of exploiting the land beyond the boundary? Emperor Shaowen sculpted his incarnation into the tallest Buddhist statue on Wuzhou Mountain. At 17 meters high with legs some 15.5 meters long, it has a lap that can hold 120 people and a foot which can hold 12. This seated statue of Sakyamuni has a blue bun, long eyes and drooping ears. He wears a loose kasaya, radiating a dignified and solemn expression. In order to facilitate divine ceremonies, a dedicated tunnel lies behind the seated Buddha. During this period, imperial idolatry reached an unprecedented height. The statue of the Lord Buddha in the fifth cave was Emperor Shaowen. Emperor Shaowen was eager to lead the Northern Wei dynasty to even greater glory. The sixth cave is extremely beautiful and magnificent. In this grotto, the Northern Wei style, famous for fine crafts and gorgeous ornaments, is perfectly manifested. In the center, a huge Buddhist statue is replaced by a 15-meter high tower, which not only serves as support for the grotto, but also constitutes its main body. The tower has 9 stories, 4 sides on each floor, and 3 niches engraved with a beautiful seated Buddha situated on each side. In the upper tower, an area visitors cannot see is carved with a vivid, imposing standing Buddha. The midsection and walls of the tower are sculpted with nearly 40 pictures on the Jataka story. They vividly reproduce Sakyamuni's journey from birth to the beyond. This is the statue Emperor Shaowen built for his grandmother, the Empress Wenming. The legendary woman led Emperor Shaowen on the road to sinification, and she also influenced his innermost thoughts. These almost naked images remind people of ancient Greece. In the late period of the creation of the Yungan grottos, a lot of curvy, buxom, flying Apsara figures were carved. Such strong vitality and appreciation of the beauty of the human body came from ancient India and Greece. This beauty was also clearly appreciated by the Xianbei people. According to historical records, Emperor Shaowen had enjoyed reading Han books since childhood, and he had a deep respect for Confucian culture. The 20-year-old emperor believed that they could integrate into the greater Chinese family only by abandoning Xianbei traditions, thus allowing the Northern Wei to rule for generations. With this in mind, the emperor had Buddhist images symbolizing imperial power in Han clothing instead of that of the Northern Wei. This move was the precursor of large-scale Sinification. Before his departure from Pingchang, Emperor Shaowen presided over the carving of this 12-meter-high Maitreya statue. Similar to the cross-legged bodhisattva in the 5 grottos of Tanyao, there is support under the right arm of the statue. But in this case, it is no longer a simple ancient Greek-style column. It is an exquisitely carved and gorgeously embellished Chinese mala. This feature is only found in the Yungan grottos. Maitreya is the dominator of the future world. Does this statue perhaps represent the determination of Emperor Shaowen to unify China? In the year 493 AD, Emperor Shaowen of the Northern Wei moved the capital to Luoyang. With that, the prairie was left far behind, and so were the Yungan grottos. The glory of the nomads was buried under thick loess. Today, Xianbei, Huren, and other related terms exist only in historical texts. The Northern Wei dynasty, founded by the brave Xianbei people, lasted for barely more than 100 years. Only through this exquisite treasure house of Buddhist art can people today capture the shadow of the vanished nomads, their joys and sorrows, dignity and faith, gains and losses. The vivid faces of these statues and the freshness of their expressions all show that the images and will of the Xianbei people can be preserved on this cliff for eternity.